This podcast is brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel, New Brunswick's only 4-star hotel and a preferred hotel of Rutgers football fans. The Heldridge helps you make the most of your game day weekend, providing premium accommodations in the cultural heart of downtown New Brunswick. Restaurants, bars, theaters, parks, museums, and more are only steps away. Whether you're traveling alone or with a large group, book your stay at the Heldridge and make the most of your game day weekend. Visit theheldridge.com today.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. We're all here. We're all back from the Keli Zinn introductory press conference. I had to make a detour, fellas. I'm not back straight from there because after President Tate got up at the press conference and answered my question by saying, "When," I had to drive to Philadelphia and run up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art because that's how fired up I was personally. When? What a great answer, man. That guy's something. He almost stole the show from Keli Zinn, but he did not steal the show. I thought Keli Zinn was fantastic. I've seen a lot of these things. I really give her an A+. It's not an easy thing to do. We make it easy. Sports win the press conference, but I mean, and I get it. The comparison sucks, but within 10 minutes of Julie Herman's press conference, I knew, holy crap, this is going to be a disaster, right? And within 10 minutes of this press conference, you're like, Rutgers has hired someone capable of doing this job. I'm not saying she's gonna turn the Scarlet Knights into Ohio State. I'm just telling you, you could tell she prepared her entire life for this, Brian, and she was ready.
I thought you were going to say you drove to Philadelphia to go to Bet Rivers Casino to hammer the over on Rutgers 5.5 wins in the football season this year. I was not expecting the Rocky pivot, but that's probably the safer choice. Yes, she won the press conference. There are adults in the room. There's a serious person in the Rutgers athletic director position, which has not been a sure thing for a decade now, at least, right? Probably not since Tim Pernetti has there been a person where, they're dedicated and will live the life of an athletic director, will focus all of their energy on making Rutgers athletics good, great, whatever word you want to use. Look, again, the bar to winning the press conference is on the floor. But as you noted at Rutgers, it's not beyond people to not win the press conference. So it was impressive. I was impressed with her before I had met her in person. I was impressed with her after. Very personable, very funny. Like we had a nice little interaction in the scrum, her and I think she's well aware of everything around. She's smart, sharp, did her homework, had the nice little note about the bells will ring. So she clearly did her homework on the traditions at Rutgers. Like these are small things that go a long way in ingratiating yourself. So, I mean, it's day one. She hasn't done anything. She talked a big game, which you want to see, but it's one thing to say, for example, that she will use the New York, Philadelphia market as all of her predecessors have. It's one thing to say that. Obviously, it's infinitely harder to break into that. She has all the right ideas. Now the question is, will she be able to execute on them? I feel pretty confident where we sit today, but I think we'll find out a lot more in the next 100 days or so.
Mm-hmm. Pat?
I just thought not only was Keli Zinn an A+ slam dunk, great orator and presenter at this press conference, I thought the people, the support staff, whoever helped her prepare, everything from the roses on the stage to the backdrop, like everything was meticulously planned, and it felt big time. It felt like something the New York Yankees would do when they're introducing its next star player. It felt not amateur, and that's the hope if you're a Rutgers fan, that this new athletic director, new president will elevate Rutgers to a level of pride. And I think that what you saw yesterday was a great first step. So everything was meticulous, and to me felt like an arrival in a lot of ways.
And that was only the first half for Keli Zinn. She goes across the hallway and she has to go into the room with all of the heavy rollers. And I reached out to a couple of them, like, how'd she do there? And it was funny, like, I charmed the pants off them is the best way to put it, like, just completely, like, they were smitten. And this is not the same thing. Like the last time I remember this, was with when Shano came back and that room was like, like a freaking frat party. Like, there's our guy. This was like, okay, we're open-minded to this. Who is this new person who's going to be leading us? And she comes in and she apparently just did a really good job in that setting, which is hard. I mean, you're just walking up to someone cold. You got 90 seconds. You'll know if this person is just like somebody's husband or if this person has got $100 million from the bank. You have no idea. Like you hope you just have to treat them all the same and handle it. And from what I understand, that went really well as well. So, checked a couple boxes certainly. And, and now's the hard part, right? That's over. And now she charges it and has to start doing the job.
What I'll say is that what I had heard from people that covered her at her other stops, people that have interacted with her, people that know people that worked with her leading into yesterday, that everyone essentially had something good to say about her. It's practically impossible. You probably have to dig really hard to find somebody who doesn't have a good thing to say about her. And I think she lived up to that yesterday, right? I think the personality, all that stuff she lived up to. I think the hope now for Rutgers is that she's able to live up to the other positive things people said about her as far as raising money, working at NIL, being able to navigate the revenue sharing era and all the stuff in college sports. That to me is the ultimate test, right? Because you can be a great person. It's all at the end of the day about results. And I think, again, on paper, everything looks great. She had a great first impression. That's all she can really do on the first day. So I guess we'll see what happens next.
Hey, all right, let's dive into some of those points. I think we agree there are like 5 topics, maybe 6 or 7 topics that we knew we had to ask, knew were going to come up. They pretty much came up in order. It was fun. Like, the things that we thought were important. And again, this is a basic roadmap. She's not, she can't go up there and say, okay, I brought my PowerPoint. Here's how I'm going to raise $100 million. It's not, right. But the first question right away, I get the mic first, the money question. Like how are you? All right, you're not LSU. $80 million in private donations in 2024. Rutgers has 1/10 of that. Not an exaggeration. What are you going to do with it? And I thought, Brian, I don't know. You follow this pretty closely. I thought she, had a good answer, like the framework of where she's going to look for money. What did you think?
Yeah, she has the right idea, right? Corporate dollars, maximizing the media market so that you're in between, and attacking to try to expand the donor base, right? Like these are clear objectives you should go to. Again, it's a matter of being able to do so. The New York and Philadelphia markets could be a blessing. They could also be a curse because you're competing against, as we've said ad nauseum for 5 decades, the Giants, the Jets, the Yankees, the Mets, the Devils, the Rangers, you can name 100 teams, right? The Sixers, the Eagles, there's a lot that you're competing against that you have to maximize with that. But if she is going to be the one that is finally unable to unlock that, then she'll be easily the greatest athletic director in school history. But beyond that, you could also find new donors, right? It feels like you see a lot of familiar faces at these events, at this press conference. I've been around Rutgers athletics for a decade, and it feels like I see the same faces all the time. There's got to be people out there that maybe can be unlocked with this new energy. Because I feel like there's the Rutgers fan base has been beaten down, especially over the past year, given the high hopes that were not met with basketball and to some extent football. I think this rejuvenated a lot of people. And I think if she can ride that wave to find those people that maybe can give, but haven't yet. So again, she has the right idea in mind. And I feel like I'm going to keep repeating myself on this pod. She has the right idea in mind. It's all about execution here. I think she can do it, but
Pat, at least she had. I mean, she saw how it was done at LSU, and to the point, like not just money for Rutgers, but the NIL game. Like, I mean, she was very active in that space down.
That's the most important thing, I thought, at the top of the list. Obviously, fundraising is paramount, but we've talked so much about what is college sports in the next 10 years, this professionalism. Obviously, President Tate addressed the CEO model and how that shifted towards Keli Zinn ultimately, but her role can't be undervalued in the space of NIL and understanding. I thought it was an interesting transcript from you guys when she was off the stage. There was a question about, well, how are you going to specifically divide up the $22 million in the House settlement? And I think a communications staffer said, no. So there was no answer there, but
Brian got
whatever
tackled,
LSU's model, LSU certainly, she was 1A on every conversation that went into those discussions, figuring out how contract situations work for football. And there's no doubt that experience will be extremely beneficial in what's unfolding in right now currently, which Shiano has taken the lead for and Pikel and others, but what it becomes in the next 5 years as things like collectives become legal again, how that will all work. It'll just be really interesting, and you should feel good knowing that Keli Zinn has that great experience of what she did at LSU with NIL and the directive of the House settlement.
I think my favorite answer, and then this is another topic that came up, the facilities question was third on the list. I think that might be my favorite of her answers, because it was sort of like, hey, look, we all love the old buildings, but and clearly this is a woman who was spearheading or was involved in the early stages at LSU of replacing a popular old building down there, their basketball center, the Maravich Center, and saw the challenges and saw the people who are like, wait a minute, I love my seat there. It's a great place to watch a game. And the counterpoint being, well, great, but we can't raise 2 nickels because we have no luxury seating. That's the ebb and flow. I don't think she's even seen the rack yet. She might have. Maybe she walked across on her way into the Rutgers Center. I don't know. But certainly it's there was certainly some level of familiarity of the challenge.
Correct. It's actually kind of incredible how similar the situations are, right? And I think her answer to me, and again, she hasn't seen the place. She hasn't sat down with people to discuss what they've done so far at Rutgers. So she's kind of speaking a little from behind here. But I think she hit the nail on the head of meeting the charm of the place, of the rack. I think the rack has that invaluable acoustics, environment, tradition, whatever, and trying to improve upon it rather than building a brand new one, right? Again, especially because if NIL and revenue sharing and all that is the priority when it comes to money, to raise money for a new rack, which would probably be behind a football facility in the list of priorities, is just not realistic. So I think my interpretation is the likely plan, when all sat down and planned for, is to improve the rack, as had been the original plan under Hobbs before he almost went rogue and tried to get Goldman Sachs to finance a new rack or whatever. So yeah, I think she understands that. And I think she understands probably that football, the stadium needs an improvement, at least in terms of more premium seating and more avenues for revenue generation. That's ultimately what matters. And on the revenue sharing, really quickly, I think no matter what her ideas might have been, she's here way too late to affect revenue sharing for this year. Those plans, I would think, have been long set for how the money would be distributed for this season for football and basketball. I think where she could take a big part is evaluating what's happening this year, taking her experience and building a plan at LSU, which is a different institution, obviously, but having her insights there and planning it for next year and the year after, especially with how the money's going to change in the coming years between $20.5 billion now to later. And she can kind of evaluate there. But I think, yes, she wasn't allowed to say what the numbers are. I think we have a good idea of what it is. Probably a little bit more for football than it was at LSU, probably a little less for men's basketball, and roughly the same for the other sports. But yes, facilities, to answer your question, I'd say the rack refurbished, Rutgers Stadium probably refurbished a little bit. I cannot expect, at least not in the next couple of years, a new building or massive changes, because the list of priorities is so much higher for everything.
Somebody said it to me this way, Pat, she's going to go in the building and she's going to look at it. And if she's good at her job, she will figure out a way to maximize the revenue in that. That's the challenge. That's the nut that Rutgers did not crack under the last couple of administrations.
But it seemed like obviously Hobbs had a decent plan. I mean, what he unveiled publicly about adding luxury suites and doing the minor renovations to the rack was on the right track. If we're talking about pulling out as much revenue as possible, bringing in luxury seating, obviously not popular for the common Bruce Springsteen working class type fan, but that's the type of revenue generation that is needed in the modern era of college athletics. So she will be great at her job if she can figure that out. But there is also a blueprint already in place, and she, I think, would be foolish not to just look upon that a little bit and try to tweak it and make it her own.
All right, staffing question. She obviously has got to fill 4 jobs. I think she made it pretty clear that she sees this as an opportunity. I talked to Debbie Yao, who is her mentor. Maryland, if you don't know Debbie Yao, one of the great figures in athletic administration. And she said to me, her most important thing now is to make sure she cannot fail at hiring her number 2. Right, she's got to find the right person in that job. It's going to be a crucial hire, and I think that the structure of the dominoes will fall underneath that. I didn't get any sense that she's, got a team in her back pocket, or she didn't give us an indication, Brian. I mean, what do you think?
She said that she's been preparing to be an athletic director for years, and she said in previous interviews that she's been taking notes along the way. I have to imagine, just like any good athletic director has a list of coaches, in the case that they want to make a change at either of the sports, she has a list of people that she's worked with along the way who she thinks would be good to work with, right? So I don't know that for sure. I would have to imagine, as prepared of a person she is, she has an idea. But big picture wise, yes, this is a great opportunity for her to build a staff and build an athletic department in her vision, in her mold of how she wants to see things, and have people that the buzzword yesterday was alignment between her and President Tate. In an ideal world, there's alignment between Keli Zinn and the rest of her staff and the Rutgers athletic department for what she wants to do. I think alignment, much like culture, is an overused word, and I'm not sure alignment is exactly the recipe for success, right? One could be aligned completely in the wrong direction, right? So it's not exactly a 100% formula for success, but I think that it's the right direction to go. She's aligned with the president, and ideally, the people she hires, she's aligned with them, and they all have the same vision to go forward.
And I'll push back on that, Pat. I think alignment in some ways couldn't be more, at least we've never had it to this level. And I understand why it's the first word she said, and she said it 3 times early on. She came here because of William Tate. William Tate, and we'll talk about that next, essentially, took the plan that they had and went and said, hey, how about we hire someone I trust? That's like, and I think this was a mutual thing. Couldn't be any, for both people, extremely important. This
reminds me of a really New Jersey political scenario, or any political scenario, right? When you're picking a running mate, who's going to be the best possible vice president, or who's going to be the person that rounds out the ticket. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to hiring her second in command, it's going to, I think, just thinking about this from a running mate, who's going to be your most trusted, well-balanced representative of Rutgers athletics. You're going to try to find a person that can satisfy the homeland per se, right? Like someone with ties to the state house, someone that's politically powerful, someone who understands that aspect of the role. Because quite frankly, while President Tate and Keli Zinn seem like slam dunk hires, they've been great so far. They are outsiders, and we've talked about that before, the challenges that are ahead of them coming from the outside. How can this new athletic department align itself with a good running mate and politically appropriate itself here in New Jersey and the Northeast really in general too?
I am curious about the structure, because what we've heard about LSU is that Scott Woodward is very much a hands-off AD and gave Keli Zinn a lot of autonomy and power to in a lot of different areas. Is she going to continue having a lot of autonomy and doing what she did at LSU at Rutgers now that she's in the big seat? Is she going to get a number 2 that is similar to what she did at LSU? Is there going to be kind of a mix and match there? I'm curious about just the dynamics of how the number 2 and her work together.
Good point. President Tate, okay, we asked him the process question. There's a lot of curiosity is how Rutgers started with, we're going to hire a CEO, we're going to hire a different structure, we're going to be pioneering, and ended up with a deputy AD. A lot of questions about that. Obviously, this is only one of the first times we've seen President Tate. I thought he handled that extremely well. He said, he did his best to explain that he came in a little late, and that the quote that stuck with me was that I did everything I could to honor the process, is what he said. What did you think of his answer, bro?
Yeah, that to me says like he came in the middle of the thing. He let it play out, right? He wasn't going to come in as a bull in a china shop and interrupt an ongoing process. But once the opening was there, after the first primary candidate, Brian LaFamina, turned down the job, there was an opportunity to make his stamp on the hire. And clearly he ended up with Keli Zinn, a person who he's familiar with, who I am sure he had in the back of his mind when he came into a school that needed to fill an athletic director role. And to his credit, he had a pretty good pitch on why she was the right person, because if you're going to have a CEO model with someone in sports business with experience on that side, and then have a number 2 with experience in athletic administration, Keli Zinn is a perfect mix of those two, because she's been a career administrator with experience in the NIL and business aspect. So why get 2 people to do the job when you can get one with both sides? I thought that was excellent spin and was a great reasoning. I'm wondering, obviously his perspective is one side of the coin, right? He's from the administrative side. There's the board of governors side who also helped run the search. I'm curious if either of you guys caught up with Amy Towers or anybody on the board of governors to get their perspective on how this whole thing played out.
You're just gonna put that on the tee for me there, aren't you? I see what you did there. That's slick. All right, let's talk about that. Yeah, we did not get an opportunity to talk to Amy Towers. I believe early in the process, had an agreement with her personal PR person that we would speak to Amy Towers afterward. That did not happen. I'm sure if he had a podcast, he would tell a different story. But we did not get a chance to speak to her. And I got to tell you, She is the chairperson of the governing board for the state's largest public university. You just completed a search for a high-profile, highly paid, front-facing public employee. I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to tell me that this is a person who shouldn't speak to the media. I think it's an absolute requirement, to hear from her and hear about the process. And look, I get it. It went sideways, right? Like she had one thing in mind. She had a process in mind. She had a hire in mind. It didn't go the way she expected, right? I mean, I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to at Rutgers after something didn't go the way they expected. I mean, and in many cases, those people are teenagers, right? I mean, just think about last basketball season. How old was Ace Bailey during last basketball season? Barely 18 years old. Like after every game, we dragged this kid from Tennessee, put him in front of us, ask him what happened to the most disappointing season in Rutgers history. And he sat up there and he explained to the best he could, here's what happened, right? And this is the last thing I'll say about it. I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who do that. That's where I'm going to leave it. All right.
How many times, just to follow up on, I think that was an appropriate response, because what do people in great leadership roles do? They stand up and lead from the front. And when you don't answer questions and hide, ultimately it feels backwards. It feels you're not attacking, to steal Ryan Day's Big Ten media did Ohio State's, right? It feels like you're defending you're coming from a defensive point, not an aggressive point of view. And I think that's bad from a leadership perspective. I think of one of the best leaders that I've covered at Rutgers, Kyle Monungai. How many times, in the same thing of Ace Bailey, how many times after a loss did we talk to Kyle Monungai and he stood up every single time and said, listen, we're going to get back to work. It didn't go our way, but we'll be back. And that maturity from a college athlete is forward facing and great leadership. And you would like to see someone at the top of the most political job at Rutgers to be, forward facing.
And this wasn't a loss. Let's be clear on that. This was a win, right? I just think there's curiosity as to what happened, what the process, how do we ended up here? And I'm sure, perhaps someone will speak to her and we'll find out her thoughts on it. I just can't explain it. It's just very difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around it. I just think it's part of the job. It should be. All right. First 100 days. I guess now this is a big question. Like, what do we think Amy Towers is going to have to tackle first? Like, she went into she's going to go home. From what I understand, she's going to fly back to Baton Rouge, get her stuff together, come back here. I mean, hiring the number 2, I think I put that first, meeting Greg Schiano. And that's one thing we didn't mention. We didn't get to that. I skipped over that question, but she still has to get inroads with the football program. I thought that was interesting, Brian, that, she hadn't had a chance to meet Greg. Like, if anybody thinks that it's Greg Schiano who's pulling the strings here to make this hire, clearly not. I mean, and you asked him about it, and he said, look, I haven't met her yet.
To be clear, he made a point to come into the media room. He wasn't scheduled to speak until next Saturday after he having spoken Monday, but he had promised us on Monday that when it was official, he would have a comment, and he lived up to his word. He showed up to the media room and gave us a quick comment where he did say twice, I think, he hasn't met her yet, but from what he has heard, he was very impressed. Obviously, she worked with Brian Kelly, and from what I understand, Brian Kelly really worked well with her down at LSU, and she was heavily involved in football, both her last 2 stops. It sounds like she called it, she expects it to be a significant relationship between her and football, which, again, would be a complete 180 compared to what it was with the previous administration. I think it's positive. And I think Greg could use someone inside the athletic department that works hand in hand with him, right, instead of having his own operation by itself, working independent of the athletic department. So we'll see how it works, but I think that's kind of going to be the key to the success of this whole thing, right? Like, she can fix a lot of things, but football, as we've said many times, drives the bus. It's the most important thing here. So if they can kind of work together, again, the buzzword alignment, that would go a long way in having a successful time.
Right. Yeah. And I think there are people who, we got some questions about it, people who are concerned about that. Like, what, they got to have a relationship. I mean, from what I understand, and speaking to Greg about this, or the sense I get from people around him, that he just wants 2 things. Right? He wants, let me do this. You hired me to do this. You told me you would leave me alone to do it. Let me do it. 1. And then 2, support me. Give me something. Like the first guy gave him 1. If Keli Zinn, who's a very smart person, can't go in there and can't provide resources, that's going to be her number 1 job. She understands that. I mean, I don't think there's any question that she said at the press conference, my role here is to give you everything I have to, give you everything possible to win. She gets it. I mean, I think they're going to hit it off as long as she's competent, and we think she's competent. And we think she's going to do a good job. As long as she does the job well, I think it's going to be a really nice relationship.
And she's not working with someone who doesn't understand exactly what he needs. Greg Schiano's been preparing for this moment and knows exactly his blueprint for the success of the Rutgers football program has been laid out meticulously, inch by inch, axe swing by axe swing, right?
Absolutely.
And to be clear, with some people, I shouldn't say some people. One person on our Discord asked, I'm not sure if other people were curious, but like why Greg wasn't at the press conference. The timing of practice was at the same exact time as the press conference. The hiring came during the first week of training camp, and like I know people saw my story. I don't know if people saw my story this weekend about Urban Meyer calling Greg a nut job, a certified nut job about the details. Every minute practically of the next month is planned out in excruciating detail for Greg, his coaches, his players, his administrators, people in the program, right? Like, I don't think it's realistic for him to shift everything on one day in training camp on a dime to attend a press conference across the street. And also, would it really make a big difference if Greg was there? I just kind of wanted to address that because people were curious why Greg wasn't there. And again, he went out of his way to make a public comment about Rutgers hiring Keli Zinn. There were a dozen coaches at the Rodkin during the press conference, and none of them made a public comment. I think that's also worth noting.
Why in the world would she doesn't want him there? She wants him coaching the football team. I mean, this is silly. I mean, that's a non-controversy, certainly. And nothing to see here, folks. All right, let's go to questions. We got a bunch of questions, good questions, both on Twitter and from the Discord, the Discord is humming. Got a lot of new people in the Discord. You put it out there and now people are joining, getting ready for the season, maybe. All right. Go through some of these. How will she avoid scandal? Every single Rutgers permanent AD since Uncle Bob has left the job in a pall of L's and dumbass scandals. What can Zinn do to avoid the most common RU outcome? I got to tell you, I mentioned the interview with Debbie Yao, who, if you don't know, because she worked in Maryland, worked in NC State. I covered her sister, Kayal, legendary NC State women's basketball coach. She's a very funny woman. And she gave me the quote, the quote of the year for me. She's like, well, she's not going to have an affair. I can tell you that, in her Southern accent. And I just I dropped the phone. I was laughing so hard. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to end badly. It doesn't have to. Like, she can do a good job, and she can do a good job and get hired back at LSU as AD in 10 years. Who the hell knows? I think avoiding scandal is just being good at your job and being aware of what's going on, like being aware of where a scandal can happen. Like it's not just the scandals that unravel, I mean, the recent AD, but it's the small ones too. It's like being aware that there are discord problems in the gymnastics program, or that people aren't happy in softball, wherever it might be. I think that's a huge part of it.
I think there are three things essentially. One, you mentioned earlier, I think she's competent, right? That's the most important part of all this. Two, I think she's savvy. I think she really does understand how the whole machine works, like the college athletics from every angle, right? Like sometimes previous ADs just stepped on rakes because they didn't know where they were walking. I think she has a pretty good understanding of the entire college sports apparatus, not just at Rutgers, but just in general. And three, I just think I lost my third thought. I had 3 points and I lost the third one. But
gotcha. Here's the third one you were thinking of. She's filled every part of her experience as an athlete, as an administrator. Mm-hmm. She's experienced and she sees athletics through every lens because she's lived it as an athlete, as someone who has been progressive and a barrier shatterer, mm-hmm. and now an administrator who has seen this whole development of professional college athletics from that lens. So she has lived every single scenario that can possibly unfold in athletics. So the third thing, I think, just to put a plug in your brain, Brian, is the experience at all different levels of athletics.
Right. To bounce off that, I guess the third thing, which is now the fourth thing, is that she's proactive, right? Like, a lot of these things happen because they fester or you're not aware, right? I think she is someone who, to use my favorite buzzword, is proactive and will see these things, a mile ahead versus people that in the past have seen them a mile behind them. And when they figure out what to do,
there's another thing that Debbie Yao said, and she was kind of pushing back on the idea of hiring a business person to be the AD, as the new trend, that the people who aren't in athletic administration do not know the problems that come from this. And she said that, Keli Zinn has been in all of these meetings. She has been handling all of this stuff for years. Right. She's seen it all. And the great story was what Debbie Howe's like, you think it's you get your suite at the stadium and you fly in the 737 with the team. But what you find out it's that 3 soccer players who are at a bar at 2 a.m. and now they're in jail. That's what Debbie Howe said. Like, that's the job. That's 97% of the job, putting out these fires. And I get it. She'll build the staff so she doesn't have to deal with all those day to day. But it bubbles up. It will bubble up to her. Of course it does. It always does. Like, it's always the AD's responsibility. We understood that when stuff was happening with, whatever program it might be, that it's not Pat Hobbs who was sitting there overseeing it. You're on top. You're in charge. So yeah, it is. It really is being aware of where those problems can come from and getting them before they become huge headaches. All right, diving in some more question. Corporate money. Given Rutgers' location and now the Big Ten exposure, besides lack of athletic success, why hasn't Rutgers attracted bigger name corporate partners? And first, we've got to give them some credit for, RWJ Barnabas, Jersey Mike's, and they have a few, right? I just think they haven't gotten, perhaps the number that they would like. It's hard. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. The New York market is great, but they're not. Keli Zinn won't be the first person who looked over at the skyscrapers and said, what's the deal here? It's obviously it's not easy.
Corporate dollars come because corporations want more eyeballs on their product, right? It's essentially marketing, right? And you want to market to as big of an audience as possible. And given, as you mentioned, the lack of success at Rutgers for 150 years, the relatively small fan base, and where it is in the pecking order of the New York, New Jersey market behind all the teams I listed before, right? It's just not a good investment for corporations to put into as a marketing expense in Rutgers, right? So the solution to all of this, which is the solution to most problems at Rutgers, is what President Tate said. It's to win. Obviously, the issue then becomes, to win, you need the corporate dollars to be able to invest, to get better athletes and coaches to eventually win. It's a chicken or the egg situation. I'm not sure what the solution is, because if I did, I would be the AD. I'm not sure there is a clear solution. I think ultimately the way to get corporate dollars is to make Rutgers an attractive place to invest your money as a marketing of your marketing budget, and that starts with winning. How you win, I have no.
I just want to piggyback on that with a little anecdote. When we were in Nebraska last year, I remember driving through Lincoln and seeing just billboard after billboard of Nebraska athletes sponsored by X car dealership or this corporate business in Lincoln. And I understand that this is all they have in Nebraska is Big Red, right? Of course. But when you drive, I was just down in South Jersey, and I don't know, I couldn't even count how many billboards I saw of Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. It's just, it's something that's, you can't solve that. It's popularity. Yeah. It's not like Rutgers is ever going to trump the Giants or the Yankees or the Eagles, wherever you are. It's just, but I don't know though. Me, when Greg had 2006 humming, right? You had the commercials with Gandolfini, and that popularity was through the roof. So, to Brian's point, if you do get it humming and it is that popular, maybe that billboard could change.
Rutgers will never be a team. There are people who live and die every day 365 with the Philadelphia Eagles, right? People in Louisiana, in West Virginia, in Nebraska live and die with the Tigers, with the Mountaineers, with the Cornhuskers. That will never happen in New Jersey for Rutgers. Like, let's be realistic here. But if you can expand that shallow pool, because there are people that do. There are people that go on the message boards. There are people who think about Rutgers 365, right? If you could expand that ever so slightly, then you're going to grow exponentially. But again, all of that starts with, to Pat's point, winning. People start caring about Rutgers football in 2006 because they won, right? That's all that matters at the end of the day. There's no magic word, speech, advertisement, elixir that Keli Zinn could use to turn more people into Rutgers fans. At the end of the day, you just have to win.
I will say this also, it's not just the big stuff. There's also low hanging fruit. It's like, how are you're introducing Keli Zinn, you're live on the Big Ten network. How in the world is there not a corporate logo behind it? It's a big R. Okay. Great. Good publicity for the university. But I mean, there's just stuff like that you see every day where you're like, why is, just kind of basic boilerplate stuff. Every press conference you see now, there's something behind the person talking. I don't know. There's just a lot of things. I guess I come back to this. When you see that number, like the LSU 80 million for donors, I get it. You're not going to, it's not Rutgers, it's going to be 80 million. But when you see 8 Rutgers, you're like, how is that not 18? I mean, honestly, like, I don't know. Like, it's just 8.
Just for perspective, Rutgers has been, for the past decade, if not the least, the athletic department among Power 5 conferences with the least donations. Probably 8 out of 10 years, it's been the least. And if it's not the least, then the second least or third, right? It's just been, to your point, if you just don't be last, right? Just what was the Chris Ash era line?
Just suck normal.
Yes. Just get little money normally. Don't be the least amount of money, right? Like, again, it's all about climbing out of the base.
All right. Good question here from someone. You mentioned that Zinn won the press conference, which isn't always the case. What are some of the best and worst, or even just the most memorable press conferences you've seen at Rutgers? Man, I mean, seen a few, I think the worst, and I come back to the most uncomfortable one. Well, can't even say that. One of the most uncomfortable ones certainly was Julie Herman's first press conference where, she made this very definitive statement that there's no videotape from an incident that had haunted her from her previous stops. And within like 24 hours, we had the videotape. It was just kind of, that to me was a, that had to be one of the lowlights. What sticks out for you guys? I know you haven't been sitting in the room for a lot of them, but like which ones do you think are the best, worst, most memorable?
I mean, memorable was Norris Wilson. I don't think I was in the room, but that was when I started following Rutgers football. That was just an all-timer. It's not an introductory press conference, I get it, but it was fun. And this isn't a press conference, but I think the most energizing thing I had seen from a Rutgers leader was Rex Giano, halftime of the 2019 Seton Hall game at the RAC, getting the place fired up, saying he's going to win a national championship at Rutgers. Like, again, not a press conference. He wasn't taking questions, but as far as that, to me, is the most memorable being there. I think the energy at the RAC there was all time.
People who don't remember the Norris press conference, Pat, I mean, it was the, what's your name? He had just taken over for Kyle Flood, which is another uncomfortable press conference when Kyle Flood returned to Rutgers after his 3-game suspension. But he had just taken over for Kyle Flood, and he was at Penn State, and they just gotten their butts kicked in the game. And instead of, just answering questions like most people do, he just went around the room and said, what's your name? And it was, what's your question? It was great. And some people are like, Coach, I'm just running the video camera. I don't have a question. It was such a weird, just in the middle of this, toxic, awful, terrible few months covering Rutgers. It was just this weird moment where like, did that just happen?
That's great. I'll parlay that with a funny one. And it's been over a year now, and the student athlete has since transferred from Rutgers, but he was a wrestler, Brian Saldano, and they were wrestling against Princeton, and it was a really scrappy match, and he got into a little bit of a pushing match with his opponent. And in his post-game press conference, they bring him up to the table like the basketball teams. And he said, when someone asked him about what happened at the end of that match, he said, well, listen, it just got scrappy. And if so-and-so wants to meet me out in the parking lot, he can meet me out in the parking lot. And that all ended up being cut out of the video and everything. And it kind of went off the record. But now a year later, I can confidently say that it was probably one of the highlights of my best Rutgers press conferences ever. Knowing Brian Saldano going back to high school is just pure Jersey wrestling through and through. So that one really stands out for sure.
Yeah. The best part about that is if they did that out in the parking lot, like I know a lot of the wrestling fans, they would have just been great. They would have just set up another. Here we're going to do
that's
these
a new revenue stream. The post match.
It is
the post match.
Pat Laney, the new number 2 at Rutgers. He just figured it out. He just got it. He got it. That's it.
That's it.
Think
Coach
outside the box.
You got my phone number.
Right. There you go. Perfect. You want to raise some money? Get some. Yeah. I would. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't go to a wrestling match, but I'd pay for that. I'd put $100 to see a UFC afterward. Little the cage match.
The Rutgers version of Rough and Rowdy. We can get fans from the stands to go out and fight. We can get the Rutgers press corps. You think people would pay for like a guy from NJ.com and the Asbury Park Press to go at it?
Someone to
me and Carino after a basketball press conference just trying to duke it out.
Be like 6 seconds long. Guys are so out of shape. People like, that's it. It's over. He's having a heart attack. All right. Fun's over. Okay. Other questions. So we got some really funny ones. How would you sum up the legacy that Matthew Giovanni left during his tenure as AD at Rutgers. How will we look back at his impact from 10 years from now? That's a funny question. I remember, and I will say this to Matt when I see him. I don't know if you guys watched the show Veep, but in Veep, there's this moment where like they try to give Louise Dreyfus a cake when she passes William Henry Harrison so she's no longer the least tenured president of all time. I was thinking about that. There should be a cake for his 29th day in office. I don't know if he got there. Though. Listen, Matt's a good guy. He put into a weird situation, went to some meetings. I mean, I think that could have been, if President Tate didn't step in, that could have been a couple months. Who the hell knows? Someone's got to be there to sign invoices. Someone's got to be there to run the show. So yeah, I think he took it in the spirit. Talking to him aside a little bit, he kind of took it in the spirit of that it was like certainly didn't expect it, and hey, something you could put on the resume. Interim AD, Rutgers Athletic.
23 days.
23. He's only 23, so he didn't top William Henry Harrison. That's a
So he's staying in this big seat until the 6th, which is next Wednesday.
Okay.
So if he has any last second executive orders he wants to sign, a new rack, practice facility, whatever. He's a facilities guy, so whatever he wants to approve, maybe a salary raise for himself. Yeah. Obviously,
when Richard Cody was acting governor of the state of New Jersey, they passed a bill to take the acting off because he had done it twice and he did it for a year. I mean, I don't know. Maybe certainly Passari, he was AD, the interim at a certain point. Then maybe we should pass an official order down there, putting their portraits could go on the wall inside. That happens. That doesn't.
I don't think it's good to have plaques of Rutgers ADs because you'd be a lot of like taking them down after a while. It's not really a proud tradition you want to be displaying, I don't think.
All right. Some other questions. We had someone push back. I got some heat from the last podcast. Of course, not for what you think, because as Brian was telling his wonderful story about seeing Amy Towers and Keli Zinn at the Frog and the Peach, I made a flippant comment about that being the only restaurant in New Brunswick. And some people were piping mad. So this is going to be a new segment. If you got a restaurant that you need a plug for, and I got the plug, I look for how could you leave Stage Left and Catherine Lombardi off the New Brunswick restaurant list? And the owner, Mark Pascal, is from Nutley. I didn't know this. I will pay for you, Fonseca, and Lanny to have the award-winning cheeseburger if you want. I do want. You don't have to pay for it. I just want the cheeseburger. Absolutely.
I also got the Stage Left and Catherine Lombardi comment on Discord for what it's worth. We might be in a situation now where every restaurant owner in New Brunswick is going to start DMing us asking for a plug on the podcast, which is fine. I will say I lived less than a block away from Stage Left for like 3 years. I went there pretty frequently for the cheeseburger. I shouldn't say frequently. I wasn't there every week, but I went there more than once for the cheeseburger. It's great. I can see why it's so highly thought of, but we can't accept the free cheeseburger. I think we can go and pay and put it on NJM's dime. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. Expense that cheeseburger for a podcast planning meeting. Let's do it. All right. That's all with the questions. We have a couple of funny ones that I might save for later. What else we got? I know what one of them is. I can't believe that the Jet ELAD thing is not done. Like, I just thought that was over, but apparently the NCAA has decided it's going to draw the line in the sand on one thing, and it's Jet ELAD. Can you give me an update on what's going on with that?
Well, the NCAA is just drawing the line at everybody. Anybody that is suing them for more eligibility, they're suing back, and they're just fighting tooth and nail. They won a case against the kid from Wisconsin who played D2, had won his case months ago, and then recently a judge in the Third Circuit said reversed the decision, so that kid can't play for Wisconsin. Ooh. A kid in Nevada in a similar situation to ELAD just won his, and Pavia obviously has never really had to argue his case again. So there's a mixed bag of results. With ELAD, as things stand, he's still going to practice. He's still currently eligible to play the season. Nothing has changed. The NCAA lawyers that lost to ELAD in April, they filed a brief, and I don't know if they're going to file an appeal exactly. I am not a lawyer, so everything I say here, take with a grain of salt. My understanding is unless they I don't even know what the word is, like issue a stay. I think if the judge issues a stay, then things flip. If they don't issue a stay, there's a possibility for oral arguments the 15th of September, which would be about 3 games into the season. And even then, I don't know if any action would be taken. These things, what's the saying? Like the scales of justice move slowly or whatever. This thing could just drag on until the end of the season when the result of the case is a moot point, right? Aside from what the NCAA cares about, which is like how we could set precedent moving forward. If you ask me right now, Will Jet Elad be eligible and play this season for Rutgers? My answer is yes. Things could obviously change. I don't know. Maybe we're going to have to run it by the lawyer and the Lanny family, who might have a better idea of how all this works. But my understanding is that that's where my understanding sits.
It's actually really interesting. I'll get Tim from Philadelphia on the line after this call to ask him his legal expertise. But it's really fascinating because I just sat in a legal hearing about a Little League player who flipped his bat. Obviously, if you followed that story at all. And Little League's argument, the lawyers for Little League's argument was these private organizations such as the NCAA, Little League, the NJSAA should be allowed to enforce its own rules. And when judges intervene, you're going down a slippery slope. So this is actually fresh in my mind. And it's a really interesting sports topic because who does have jurisdiction over giant, what court has jurisdiction over this? It's really fascinating from a legal perspective. And maybe we'll have to have a judge.
Pat, Little League lost that case. Right? There's another example, just like the Knox case in wrestling last season. The NJSAA lost that case. They're losing those cases.
In both those cases, it was from an outsider's perspective with no legal training or background, a court that has, in my opinion, zero jurisdiction. Right, like this shouldn't have even gotten to that level. Steps in and says, okay, that this child is going to have irreparable harm because if he misses this game, his life will be ruined forever. Or in the case of Anthony Knox, if he doesn't win his 4th state wrestling title, he'll be damaged for the rest of his life. And that's what the courts ruled. So it's really fascinating. And it's the same here at the NCAA level, just in certainly different circumstances regarding eligibility, not necessarily suspensions or breaking rules in these two.
The interesting thing with Elad, and again, all these cases are slightly different detail-wise, right? But the interesting thing is if enough of these circuit courts, are different in their opinions on this stuff, right? There's enough dissent, or again, legalese is not my best language, but my point is if there are different decisions in different cases, like does this ever get to the Supreme Court? Like, is this going to be a situation where the Supreme Court of the United States is going to ultimately rule on the 5-year rule of the NCAA? Like, I'm never one to believe that institutions are infallible, and that I think that all these rules should be challenged, but we're getting to a point where it's ridiculous, right? Like the court, there's so many more important things that should be resolved in the court of law. I don't think we should be spending valuable time and dollars on the NCAA is one thing. Little League is ridiculous. Like what are we? When I read that story from Pat, which she did a great job reporting on all the developments, it's just like, what the hell are we doing? Like, and then they lost anyway. Not that I'm going to dunk on a 12-year-old kid for losing a baseball game, but all that to lose 10-0. Like, I don't know.
This guy.
The key is to hire a good lawyer, right?
That's it.
That's the key. Hire a good lawyer. And Rutgers hired the best lawyer. I mean, if I were in trouble, I'd go to Kevin Marino, who's the guy who handled that case. I talked to Kevin about it at length when I thought it was resolved. I'm guessing he's still involved. I would, if I had to drive across state lines to put a bet on Kevin Marino, I think Eli's going to play this year. That's my guess, but we'll find out. Anything else going on, fellas, football wise, early in camp? No disasters yet. Nothing to report. Really? No.
Okay. Straightforward. Seems so.
Straightforward. Seems so. Good. All right.
Yeah, they put on pads for the first time yesterday, so there's really nothing to report. I guess the one last thing I would say before we sign off here, looking at the bonus structure for Keli Zinn, which we'll have a full breakdown on our site soon. The big takeaway for me is that essentially she is betting on herself. A lot of her bonuses are tied on positive performances for football, for basketball, and in her own revenue generation. Obviously, that's not unprecedented. But the interesting thing to me is that usually these things are set values. I think Pat Hobbs, if you look back at his, was probably 10,000 for a 10-win season in football, for example. I'm just making one up, but my point is there was a set value. Hers is percentage. So, for example, if football wins 7 to 8 games this year, she will get 5% of her base salary, and that percentage will be consistent every year. So if she gets an annual raise of 50,000 as she's expected to every year, that goes up the longer her tenure goes. So I just think that the more interesting thing, obviously, is that she is getting a percentage bonus if she raises a certain amount of revenue. That's obviously her biggest priority, as we said multiple times on this pod. So for her to have not only a personal investment of doing a good job, right, if she's able to do that, to get some monetary benefit, this is essentially her betting on herself. I think that's it's a good model. I think I'd feel pretty encouraged if I was a Rutgers fan.
Yeah, good for her. And I think she's been betting on herself the entire time of her career. I love the joke she made about her husband saying that she's been an assistant coach for 25 years. This is her shot. Yeah, I mean, this is it. Why wouldn't she? And so far, first impressions mean a lot. They do matter. She made a good one. Now she goes to work. She goes behind the scenes. She gets to work, and we cover football, I think, right? Okay. I don't know when we're going to record our next pod, but when we do, we'll be talking a lot of football. I promise. I want to thank everyone who's listened.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.